Welcome to the Orange Hammer Podcast. My name is Corbett Storick. I've been a licensed general contractor for 8+ years, specializing in new construction, renovation, furniture building. I'm the son of an architect and an interior designer, and I've been surrounded in this industry since birth, watching all aspects from concept, design, build, punch list, and of course, all the problems that come up in between. In my time in Durham, North Carolina, I've noticed a significant gap in knowledge between homeowners who need work and the people who do the work. On this podcast, I hope to break down the process of homeownership from the perspective of both the homeowner and the contractor in an effort to help raise the knowledge of homeowners about their homes and the construction/renovation process. I hope you enjoy. If you're enjoying the Orange Hammer Podcast, or if you have a topic that you want covered, or have recently done a project, please contact the Orange Hammer Podcast. The Orange Hammer Podcast is on Instagram and Facebook. Please like and subscribe, share on whatever platform you're enjoying your podcast on. Also, check out our YouTube channel, The Orange Hammer. The Orange Hammer Podcast is proud to be brought to you by CRS Contracting LLC for all your construction and handyman needs, new buildings to renovations, furniture building, EV charger install, or even a TV mounted. You can call me, Corbett Storick. It'd be my pleasure to help you. You can find me on Instagram at CRS Contracting. WSDG, the Walter Storick Design Group, specialists in architectural and acoustical consulting. Check out WSDG.com. And Taylor Bragg, for all your artistic needs in all mediums. You can find her on Instagram at brag_about_art. That's brag, BRGG, with 2 G's. She's the fantastic artist behind the Orange Hammer logo, and she did my fantastic table painting of my podcasting table. Welcome, everybody, to today's episode. My guest is Mark Simpson. He works for Nest Realty. Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Corbett. Thanks. Glad to be here.
I appreciate you coming on. I know we tried to schedule this before the new year. Happy New Year to you.
Same.
These obviously are coming out later than recording, so we're recording this first couple of weeks in January. So yeah, we had some scheduling conflicts. I'm glad we were able to just make it work. That's the benefit of this kind of low key situation here.
Very true.
So Nest Realty, before we jump into that, are you from the NC area?
From upstate New York and northern New Jersey. I had a set of split parents, so I kind of did double duty up there, but kind of grew up in upstate New York and came and went to Duke, graduated in 90. Caught the fever of the South. Upstate New York is no place to grow up unless you're covered in hair. So, I was happy to be back here. Been 15 years, 16 years, I guess, now back.
16 years you've been in North Carolina. Back here. Okay.
So,
we were having a little debate before the mic started rolling of air quotes upstate New York, because I'm also from upstate New York, but our definitions...
I used to vacation in the summers down where you lived.
Yeah, the southern of upstate. Yeah. So
exactly.
It's like, it depends on who you ask. Because like 90 miles north of Manhattan, think of New York City as New York, and everything else above Westchester is upstate New York.
Yeah.
And then you get to Albany and people are like, we're in upstate New York. You're in mid New York or the Hudson Valley or the Hudson region or whatever.
Canada
and then
is
you're
my neighbor.
basically in Canada.
That was the closest city. Drive to Ottawa.
And then I went to college in Oneonta, which is like northwest west.
Yep, absolutely.
And that's just like, they are so used to snow that we got 2 feet and we didn't have a snow day.
No.
I was shocked.
40 below, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
School's open.
Yeah. And I'm the weird one who was like, well, because I drove to campus, I'm like in shorts and a winter coat. I was that dude who's like, well,
you're that dude right now, too.
That's true. Yeah, I never changed. Yeah, that's true. It's warmer here. Well, anyway.
That's true. That's true.
But I remember one time in Oneonta, I went to Hartwood College, which is the private school across from the SUNY school.
Yeah, I know it.
And we had, at my freshman year, Valentine's Day weekend, we had the first snow day in like 11 years in the school's history because they're just so good at plowing. We got, I think it was like 3.5 feet of snow overnight.
Yeah.
And it took a day and a half for the campus to plow, so we were closed those 2 days. But then they gave us a third day because they were plowed, but the city wasn't. Like Oneonta was like, we are good at snow, but not 4 feet in a day.
Right, and where do you put it? I mean, you can plow it, but then suddenly you're plowing in cars,
and
people
all
can't get
the
out. Yeah.
and all the like professors live in a house, 20-minute drive away. But like 20 minutes outside of Oneonta is like the real woods country, back roads. So if it's not plowed and perfect, like, this is before, COVID made the push of online learning. That didn't exist really at my time. No. Which I'm thinking back is like not that long ago.
This is sad. Online did not exist back when I was in school. So there was no, forget online learning. There was no line to get on. Right. It's like, it's horrible.
My dad tells me a story of him visiting my much older sister in college in Colorado and her being like, hey, Dad, come here, look at this. And they go into a cafe and she's like, look, this is called the Wild Web. And he was like, huh? And it was like the first introduction to like the world. I don't even know what she showed him. Probably Google. Well, Google probably wasn't a thing. Yeah. I don't even know, actually.
But what was the first thing that people were looking at on the web? Who knows?
That would actually be an interesting thing to, I'm sure it was something that wasn't publicly available. Like it was probably like some high, like maybe like the government agency was using the
something
web,
that no one wanted to look at.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden somebody was like, I could sell plumbing parts to a guy in Virginia from California, and boom.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so Duke brings you down from the South. Duke, great school. What'd you study at Duke?
I was a psychology, sociology major.
So you never wanted to work again?
Exactly. I knew for sure I would not be a sociologist.
Did you have an English minor? No, I'm
just
kidding.
It's funny. All three of my kids went to Duke. My youngest is there now as a sophomore. Every single one of them had a major, a minor, a certificate, and 3 other things. I'm like, I could barely graduate with a sociology major. I'm like, I went to my, my counselor, and he's like, you're going to have to take a lot of sociology classes just to get out of here. And I'm like, okay, that's my major. And he's like, yes, it is. Because there's no other way for you to get out.
Definitely was one of those like, one major, no minor, I got a business degree at a liberal arts school, which is already a joke.
Right.
And I was like, I know I don't want to work for somebody, so I should learn how to run a business. So I was like, I'll take some financing, some accounting classes.
There you go.
My
pitch to when I interviewed for jobs was, hey, psychology taught me, how to figure out people one-on-one, like I'm figuring you out right now. Sociology taught me how to figure out people in groups. If that's not sales, I don't know what is. And they're like, good call.
I mean, that is true.
It is. I meant that honestly, but it was, I've been in sales all my life, and here I am selling real estate. So it worked out well.
So after college, did you immediately go into real estate?
No, I got into this late in life. So I was in that job that I interviewed for at Duke that I thought I was going to change the world. It was a executive training program, and it May Company stores. I got hired they have a branch of department stores like Lord & Taylor and some other big ones, but I got hired and I got put in women's better shoes. I'm like, there's only 2 guys in my class. There's 30 women. Why am I, put me in, men's clothing, put me somewhere. But
like women's, to sell shoes on the floor in a store?
No, not like Al Bundy, on Married with Children. That shows my age as well.
I know Married with Children, so we're clear.
There you go. All right, not a shoe salesman, but I would, so I was the buyer for all the department stores. So we had.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so
I'm buying women's better shoes.
Yeah, you were the purchaser.
Correct. Yeah. And I, again, I've sold widgets before, and that's fine, but women's better shoes was not my calling. I was like riding the subways, looking at women's feet, going, "Hey, are those Via Spigas?" And they're like, "Okay, who are you?"
So you were
yes, they are.
To be a creep.
Please, exactly. Please get away from me. So I knew I was done with that.
And then you met your wife. No, I'm just kidding.
My wife was already my wife at the time. Yeah, thank goodness.
I met my wife on the subway. She was rocking these sweet
killer shoes. Nah, she was my college girlfriend. So
the horror movie writes itself.
It does. It does. And then I just, I did a variety of things, mostly entrepreneurial. Started some companies, did a bunch of stuff, and then was running a company down here, but out of my basement, I had started this online version of a company that I had run once before. So I'm not dealing with people. I'm in my basement alone. Everything's taken care of, automatically. That is not my gift. I talk a lot and I like people. So I realized I was kind of miserable. And my wife is a business coach, and she looked at me one day and said,
we can do different.
Yeah, you need to do different because you're not a lot of fun to be around. So real estate came up, and it was a perfect fit. It really is. It's been 6 years, and it's just been my calling.
Before we dive into the real estate like part of your career, which is a main reason why you're here for sure. This basement you mentioned, is this a house you own?
It's a house I just sold.
The first one you bought?
No, that was house number 10.
You have bought,
my wife and I
sold 10 homes.
My wife and I have done 10 homes. I mean, and I wasn't even a real estate agent. I've only done 2 as a real estate agent. But
okay, so we got to dissect this because there's a listener who's like, I want to do that, and I'm not a realtor, and you weren't then. So this is super interesting. So when you buy the first home, is it always in the back of your mind, like, we're going to do something, flip this, move, or you just buy a home because you're buying a home because that's what people do?
We were babies. We weren't even married yet. And just said, we had some money, that we had, both had jobs for a while out of college. And we're like, money was cheap then. It didn't become cheap by the time we were done. But yeah, we ended up buying a home and then moving, and sort of did a couple of reasons why, but then we sort of caught the real estate wave, and we bought a home that we thought would probably be our permanent home. We had 2 kids at the time. My wife was pregnant, and somebody came by and knocked on our door and said, "Would you sell your house?" I said, "No." And they're like, "Well, what about for this?" And I'm like, "Well, welcome to my home.
Right.
Welcome to your
coffee?
home." Yeah, exactly. So we sold that, made a bunch of money on it, moved across the street, literally, like I could see the house from there. Same thing happened 2 years later. They're like, somebody knocked on my door, a real estate agent said, "I've got a client, would buy your house."
So this was fluky more than planned.
It was fluky. And, the funny part is, I remember when we were looking to sell this house or buy the house, the first one that we were sort of in with a family, my dad was telling me I shouldn't do it. My financial guy was telling me, absolutely not. You're going to be house poor. I made a lot of money buying and selling houses. And the last one I did before I moved to North Carolina literally was the day that the housing market and the whole bubble burst. And I walk out of closing and people are like,
'08.
Yeah, '08.
Yeah.
I mean, I walk out of the closing and people are like, "Oh, the world's on fire." And I'm like, "Is the ink dry on that deal? Because I want out."
Yeah. I'm done.
Yeah. And so we moved from New Jersey, very expensive, down to North Carolina, and just sort of started over again, and have done that a couple of times. And then, so I've always had the real estate bug, and I've always liked the art of the deal, and just sort of.
Are you doing a lot of work to these houses, or even any? It sounds like you moved in thinking, we love this house, we bought it as is, and then somebody was like, "I'm just going to give you more money."
Pretty much. I mean, we've since done that. When we moved to here, we bought an old ranch in Hope Valley Country Club, and sort of blew it up and became bigger than we had hoped. But
that's where my brother first lived when he first bought a house.
But yeah, I mean, it's a
nice part of town.
It is. It's super. People want to be there. And 15 years of being there was great, but I'm an empty nester. We were like, hey, people want to pay a lot for our house. Let's go ahead and cash out. And we are renting in one city center in the middle of downtown Durham on the 15th floor.
You guys are now all full circle back to renting.
I never had rented before in my life. The first house I ever lived in was one we bought. And so it's been, as a real estate agent, I'm probably not supposed to be renting. I'm sure I'm supposed to be living in a house.
This is America. You do whatever you want.
Practice what
man.
I preach.
Yeah.
But, it's fitting what we want right now.
That's what I was just going to say. The practice what you preach, it's fitting your life. Your
Correct.
life is not your client's life or even the next client's life or my life. Like, if you guys are happy renting on the 15th floor in downtown Durham,
absolutely
enjoy. I hope you have a view of the ballpark.
We absolutely do.
That's amazing.
We're on that side of One City Center. I can see over the bowl that says, hit a steak. Hit the bowl, win a steak.
I'm jealous of your view, and I'm jealous of nothing else about that. But that's
exactly.
me. We're different people.
100%.
I don't have enough land right now, and I'm on a half acre.
Yep.
And,
100%.
I can't wait to move the 11 that I purchased outside of Hillsboro. But I got to build a house, and that's going to take 5 years at least.
Hey.
So, everybody has different goals, dreams, ambitions, and no one is wrong, correct, better, worse, whatever.
100%.
You have to do your own thing. So, I get the joking sentiment where you're like, practice what you preach, but there's nothing wrong with renting.
Practicing what I preach is, hey, what works best for you?
Right.
If renting is the gig, great. I mean, and with the real estate market the way it was and has been and continues to be with a lack of inventory, renting has become the only option for a lot of people. I have doctors who move in and have to start. Right. They're like, I got to live there or I don't have a job, and I've already quit my other one. So if you can't find me something, or if we can't find something, I got to rent. And, then the rental market just went through the roof as well. So, it's a crazy time.
Yeah. I mean, I have a foot in each pod because, like, obviously the properties that we are doing, we've got to buy them. Yep. So that's real estate. But once we gut them and make them arguably too nice to be a rental, we are then renting them. So I'm in both sides, and I don't think we've had a rental sit vacant more than 3 weeks.
No, probably not. Like, and you're charging a premium, I hope. And
I mean, we're not even charging, above where we ask Weston Woodall, Stacy, and Chris, who were here yesterday. Chris is my guy. I go, hey man, what's the actual real life, between what and what? Mm-hmm. We put it on the high end, but not above. And if it ever got to a month with no showings, we'd take $50 off. It's never happened.
And I bet you it won't for a while.
I don't believe it will. I mean, especially when most of these rental prices that we're getting are more or less 2-factor location, square footage. Mm-hmm. So the square footage you can't control. The house is the house. Right. But when you walk into the square footage of my house versus the one next door, my house has granite countertops and glass, door in the shower, nicer tile, better floors. Sure. We're pet friendly. So if the houses are actually the same and we're just going location and square footage, my house is nicer. It's just that simple. We build it to sell, and then we rent it because we're selling it later.
And you can take 25. I mean, I've seen homes that are 3,500 square feet and homes that are 2,500 square feet. And you'd bet the farm that 2,500 square foot is a bigger house. And I do that all the time. People are like, I need this much square footage. I'm like, do you really?
Whoa. You just confused the hell out of me. Sorry. Say that again.
So I get clients all the time saying, hey, I got to, what parameters do you want me to look for in a house? I got to have 3,500 square feet. Okay. How about this house? Take a look at this one. Exactly. That's perfect. I'm like, that's a 2,500 square foot home. And they're like, no, it doesn't look like it. I'm like, I know it doesn't look like it, but
do they come up with that number based on, HGTV, or are they like, we just
thank you. That has been the biggest problem with,
where do they get that number? Do they just think that's the right number?
They've lived in a home that was 2,500 square foot and it wasn't laid out properly and it felt closed. Yes. And they're like, I need more space.
100%.
No, you just need better space.
You just need a layout.
Exactly.
Layout.
You need something that works better.
So
I try not to limit people on there, because if I'm putting something in the MLS for a search, if I put 2,700 square feet as a minimum, that 2695 home that comes on that we don't see because it doesn't pop up may have been the perfect house. So I will always go lower than that. Same with price. When people say, I don't want to go lower or maybe even higher, $900,000 is my cap.
So let's jump into real estate. No. This is our podcast, and it can go every direction. You want to talk about tree bark for 5 minutes? I don't even care.
I've got a lot of opinions on tree bark.
I don't. Yeah. I think that's a pine. I don't know. No, but okay. So my first, I'm curious, what zone of real estate do you try to be in? Are you do you like first-time home buyers? Does that not affect you? Is there a price point you like to stay in? Do you not go below $1 million? Do you not sell land? What kind of zone are you in? Because there's many facets of real estate, and a lot of times, I respect when Stacy says, that's not my expertise. Call John Doe.
Correct.
I love that, because that shows to me just a level of knowing your zone. I'm never going to rent a sprayer and paint the inside of a house ever again. Did it once. I'm going to hire my painter. He's a pro. Right. He owns the sprayer. Here's a check.
Yes.
I know my lane. So what's your lane?
So, based on my age, and where I lived, being in Hope Valley. So I'm 54 years old. went to Duke, have a lot of friends who went to Duke, have a lot of doctor friends. So there's a lot of the pond that I swim in has some more affluent people. It's more fun to sell $1 million home than it is a $250,000 home because it's
Right,
the
it's a
same
percentage-based.
amount of work.
And it's percentage based.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. I get paid
money.
my 3% or whatever it is I'm buying. So I try and swim in that pond and in that lane. But if I do a lot with doctors who come in, since I have a lot of doctor friends, they refer me a lot of, hey, we just hired 2 new people. And those 2 new people might be somebody who's coming to do their residency and they don't have a lot of money. So it's a $400,000 house, and one that's they're hiring away from the Mayo Clinic and is well established and world renowned, and that's a $1.5 million house. I will never turn away the $400,000 house or the $250,000 house. Case in point, I just got called by somebody who I sold a $250,000 house from. Well, guess what? They just got a ridiculously great job. Can you sell me that can you sell the $250,000 house? And now I want to buy an $800,000 house. If I had turned them away to somebody else, I wouldn't get that 800. So you never know where people are going to end up in life. I've got a full-time assistant, so that really helps. If it's just me and I only have 24 hours in a day, it's tough to sometimes keep up, and I don't want to lose $1 million house because I'm so busy with a $250,000 house.
So how many clients in Nest Realty is just you, or are there other people?
No, we've got 2 we are the person who owns this Nest here locally in Durham. We have one in Durham and one in Cary. But it's
is it like a franchise type of thing?
It is, and franchise. They don't like us to use that word. I'm not quite sure what to use other than franchise. But it was I think we maybe have 20 something locations, mostly in the southeast.
Are they all owned by one owner?
They're all owned by individuals.
That's a franchise. You pick if you don't like the word, you got to supply another
like
one.
A franchise,
yeah,
it's a
sorry,
franchise.
I don't know why that's a negative connotation.
So long as my boss is not listening to this, he's like, he doesn't like the word bespoke either. It's like,
okay, well, let's bespokingly get him as a listener, because I want him as a listener and a guest for that matter.
There you go.
But
anyway, we've got
whether
like
it's
60,
a franchise or not,
we've got like 60 agents in our 2 offices.
Okay, so the Durham one and you said the Cary one are kind of on one umbrella.
We now have them on one umbrella, just both owned by the same guy.
And you're, agent 47 out of 60 in that group.
Well, I'd like to say I'm higher than 47.
Well, who knows which way I was counting?
I don't know, but yes.
See, you're judging, and you don't even know what you're judging. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
I'd love to say
you're agent 1 or 50.
Somewhere in between. Somewhere in between. Yeah, and so there's lots of good agents around, and if I ever need to refer to somebody, we've got a lot of people who new agents who are just starting out, and maybe they get some of that lower price fruit because they're 24 years old. I mean,
so
they don't know anybody with money.
You're an agent, not a realtor. They're separate, right?
No. So we're all real estate agents, and then if you belong and abide by the code of being a realtor, that is a national organization. You have different standards that you're held to. So it's kind of like whiskey and bourbon, and I'm going to get it wrong, but every agent is a real estate agent, but not every real estate agent is a realtor.
Okay. So you're a real estate agent.
I am a real estate agent and a realtor.
You're both. You're everything.
So
okay.
I've done my little realtor training, and
But to clarify for listeners, like one is usually hire and one hires the other, right? Like realtors hire a slew of agents to work under them.
No, anybody can be a realtor. They just have to go through, they have to pay theof dues. That's the main part. And then you go through a little bit of different training. So we are held to, they say, a higher standard. I think most of the agents that we work with, that maybe not, I think probably everybody in Nest is probably a realtor. I think we highly recommend it. But not all agents are created the same.
Right. And it's an exam?
It is. There's some training that goes on. I mean, the real estate license is an exam.
So it's a little training / class maybe, and then
it's a 70-hour class, and then you got to pass that. Then you got to take the state exam to become a real estate agent,
right? Which
is also known as a broker. Those 2 things are pretty synonymous.
Okay.
And a realtor just has a little more training, and again, we have some stronger ethics that we abide by.
And there is. I feel like I asked Stacy some of these questions, but I don't really remember. Is there like a national governing body that will, that printed these standards and practices and is like, this
Absolutely.
is how you ethically operate?
And that probably is the National Association of Realtors. So
Okay.
that group that I have joined to sort of distinguish myself a little bit, that was the original. In fact, they were one of the original licensing agencies that finally, there was so much corruption in real estate as there was in a lot of things way back in the day. It was kind of the Wild West, and hey, I'm going to work with you. You're going to work with me. Let's all collude together. Let's rip people off. Let's, gerrymander and push people out that way. And finally, I think they were, if not the first, they were sort of the gold standard that doctors and lawyers then said, we need to get like a code of ethics.
So if I screw you over as a contractor,
Mm-hmm.
you can go to the North Carolina Licensing Board and for general contractors
Yep.
and file like an official thing and be like, he charged me 10 grand and he didn't finish, or whatever it is.
Correct.
Right? And then, that is marked. Like when you type in my license number, in that to search, it's there. Like either it's pending or it's solved or it's not solved or he paid, whatever. So, you go and look up my license number and there's absolutely nothing. But does that exist?
That it exists sort of
realtor?
more state by state. So the North Carolina Real Estate Commission is the one that if somebody didn't like what I was doing or any agent was doing, they can file a public complaint and say,
and then my next question is, can I, as John Doe looking for a realtor, can I go onto some sort of website and be like, oh, I saw an ad for Mark Simpson. Let me see if he's got complaints. Is that publicly available?
I think it is public. I think it's public domain and publicly searched.
Because mine couldn't be easier. And I tell, like, every time I hear a nightmare story of like, oh, I got ripped off by a contractor, I'm like, did you do any research? Did you type in his license number into Google? Did you get a reference? Did you do anything? And it's always like, nah. He seemed like a good dude.
Somebody told me they were good.
It's like, well, this is your life we're talking about. This is your life. And in most cases, which is the reason I started this podcast, it's the most expensive part of your life.
And that same person will go on Amazon and search for an hour to find the best soap.
They'll read 100,000 reviews.
It's like, okay, I love soap. I'm a clean person.
Me too.
That's great. But it works. All right. And maybe it'll give me a rash. I don't know, but I don't do a whole lot of back end research on that. But I mean, come on. It's the biggest purchase of your life. You got to do some due diligence.
It is so much money. It is so much money.
You'd be surprised at how many people do not.
I wouldn't be surprised. I literally started this podcast because of it. I started this podcast because the same person called me to their house 3 times to talk to them about their bathroom. And they could not understand why tile was over the lip of a bathtub and I couldn't just rip out the tub and put in a new tub and keep the tile exactly where it was for like $400.
Right. The other guy told me he could. And it's like,
no, actually, they didn't even get another guy to do that. They just like saw a quick,
well,
reel
it's good
on
that they
Pinterest.
found you because you're legit and know what you're doing.
Absolutely. But I was like, what part of like, I was like, how, you ever see a raindrop? Like, I'm like, are you guys really not like, where do you think the water goes? Like if there's a crack and nothing stops it if there's no lip if we put it behind it, your ceiling above your kitchen below this bathroom will be moisture rotted in 6 months. Like it was baffling to me that they just couldn't like think of that and comprehend that. And that's where I was like, okay, people don't know anything about the $100,000 to $1 million box that they bought.
Yep.
Like you need some basic understanding of
very true.
What size breaker you need just minimal. You don't need to wire it. Just know the difference
that's
between
the
20 and 60.
Like I know enough to make me dangerous when it comes to doing like looking at a house. I'm not a house inspector, but I know what to look for. I've done it long enough. I've been enough home inspectors and home inspections, but there are things that I don't understand. And because I don't understand them, I am going to make sure that I learn a little bit about them before I just hire the first electrician that I find on the web. I almost said phone book, which would have really dated me. It's like Yellow Pages.
Okay. We'll call
your listeners.
There's
are like,
yellowpages.com.
What are Yellow
so
Pages?
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Phone books are these old things that cops used to hit criminals with.
Yes,
no,
and kids used to sit on them so they could reach the dinner table. So, but I know enough to say, hey, listen, that is, to your point, it's out of my lane. I'm not going to paint a house again because I did it once and it didn't work, or I hired somebody and it was horrible. You know, contractors get a bad rap sometimes, as do real estate agents. I think we're ranked trustworthiness. It depends on the survey and when it was. We're like right below used car salesmen and right above trial lawyers.
Yeah,
and I'm
we're
like,
the worst
wow,
people ever, according
we're
to
the scum of the earth. It's like, but you're entrusting us to have the biggest investment you're ever going to have.
Yeah.
So,
but also, when's the last time you had a conversation that was like, oh yeah, I hired this guy and it was perfect, story over? You know, no one shares that story. Correct. Everybody shares that. So I hired this guy, and and his ass crack was hanging out, and he was drinking on the job.
I hired that guy.
And it was crooked, and it leaked, and whatever. Like, that's more entertaining. Nobody wants to hear a nurse talk about the perfect bandage job. They, oh, this guy came in with 6 knives sticking out of his head and whatever, and it was the greatest gory story, fill in the details. Like, that's, you know, news. Look at news.
100%.
Fun stuff is not entertaining. It's you
I always
want the
use
horror stories.
I use the Vegas analogy. You've never heard anybody come back from Vegas and say, I just lost my shirt.
Yeah.
I lost everything I owned. You only hear the one guy who comes back. I mean, everybody comes back and says, oh, I won $300. Well, not everybody's winning.
Right.
Vegas is big and
Vegas.
they're making money. Not everybody's winning, but you don't hear those stories.
Yeah.
And
also, what you don't hear is the guy who won $300 spent $1,200 to win $300.
Exactly.
We just ignore that. We're like, oh, good for you. But did you really?
Right.
You put $1,200 in that slot machine, and then you walked away with $300 once, and you're like, I'm a winner.
Exactly. I'm going to tell everybody.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think to your point, doing your due diligence on the things that are expensive or that really are meaningful, like hiring a contractor, like hiring a real estate agent, or, you know, whatever it may be, big purchases. Yeah, you got to do yourself that favor. And
I mean, it's
around.
like as simple as like, would you buy a car without even test driving it? Never. Who? I mean, maybe, you know, a movie star is like, well, I like this one. Get me one in purple. Okay, different tax bracket, people.
I'd like to sell that person's house. Yeah,
I would like
exactly.
to do his bathroom renovation. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
but that's different tax bracket, different lane. Yeah. For the rest of us, who movie stars are not listening to my podcast, though.
Not yet.
I hope one day.
Here they come.
Yeah, right. You know.
Hey, Tom Hanks, how you doing?
Tom, I'm a fan.
Me too.
Love Tom Hanks to have done a house renovation and come on here and talk about it. Oh man, yeah.
Well, let's just pretend Tom's listening.
Yeah, Mr. Hanks. I'd probably call him Mr. Hanks. He'd have to correct me.
Totally would.
He'd correct me.
And even if he did, I'd still call him Mr.
I
Hanks.
know, right? It would be so awkward because I freely admit that I'd schoolboy out on him. Like, I'd be like, you have any idea? I've been watching you since I was literally born, and like, you're the only actor that never did like a crazy CGI movie and is still at the top. Like,
love him.
Yeah, I mean,
can I tell you my one brush with Tom Hanks?
You've met Tom Hanks?
Oh, well, meet and bump into are two different stories.
I want to hear it. You bumped into Tom Hanks?
I'll digress, but that's what this podcast my particular one might be all about. It's like tree bark and Mark meeting Tom Hanks. So a buddy of mine ran a big magazine, Glamour magazine, and they would do these Women of the Year awards. Big deals in New York City. Big, it was televised, the whole 9 yards. So it's like a big production. And he was one of my best friends. And so he would invite my wife and I and other of our friends to come to these events.
Okay. And
we would go, go to Lincoln Center and watch, these 10 women be honored. And it was really cool. It's like going to Grammys or Oscars or whatever. And we technically were seat fillers. So
I gotcha.
We would have great seats until somebody else would show up or whatever. And his secretary or assistant really liked my wife and I don't know why. We always got the best seats of our group. So we are sitting like down close to the front in one of these events. And, we're all dolled up and I'm sitting next to the guy who's in charge of Viacom. He's being like shouted out and I'm like, okay, this guy's worth $1 trillion. And finally I get the Mr. and Mrs. Simpson, we need your seats. And I'm like, okay. Shoot, it was fun while it lasted. So I get up and I'm sort of walking with my ass in people's faces as the Viacom guy.
Aisle,
and kind of bumping and just be like, hey, And I get out and I walk in the aisle and I bump into somebody and I turn around and it's Tom Hanks. And I literally kind of reared back and stepped back and I bumped into somebody else and it's Steven Spielberg.
Jeez.
Both their wives were being honored and I was just, and then I think I sprinted away. Like, that was my chance to say, love your work, Mr. Hanks, Mr. Spielberg, you're great too. And instead, I completely froze. And it's like, every time I ever have a brush with fame, I forget what I
you
wanted to say.
You would think, you want to think in your head, like, I'd be cool. I would just say, like, thank you for your talent.
And then we become friends and
walk
go
away
out. And call me.
And not be the jerk who's like, selfie? But I would totally be like, oh my God, can I get a picture? Like I would ever look at that picture ever again. I put it on Facebook and never think about it ever again.
You have a giant picture of Tom Hanks on your wall. Isn't that, sorry, I wasn't supposed to say that. Well, Tom, if you're listening, I'm sorry I bumped into you, and I'm a huge fan. You're great. Keep on doing what you're doing.
Zero recollection of you bumping into him.
I'm sure.
He's like, I remember my wife getting honored, and I didn't bump into anybody. I bet you $100. He's like, what? Me and Steven Spielberg were so drunk.
And I'll tell that story anytime. I'm the only one who's telling it. It's not Tom. But anyway, I definitely digress. But Tom, if you're listening, it was a big moment. Yeah. Big moment.
It was a big moment for you.
Yep. I'm sure you remember me.
We hope that you're an Arch Hammer podcast.
That's right.
Fan and listen.
That's right. First time caller, long time listener.
Oh my God. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. My buddy Matt dropped that on me when I had him on the Zoom podcast. He was like, I'm a long time listener. And I was like, that's not possible. This is episode 12. He was like, just let me have it. I was like, I appreciate that you've even clicked on every episode. He's a general contractor in Vermont. So he was like, I love it. This is great. Yeah.
Nice.
So when to dial it back just a little bit in,
please,
to the more circle here. You said something that caught my ear a little bit. You were like, I know enough, but not enough. And like, you know enough from being in the industry and seeing a lot of home inspections, but you're also smart enough to be like, I don't really know that. Let me either learn about it or call somebody or whatever. Where's the knowledge come from? Does it come solely from being in the industry? Did you grow up with like a GC dad or a handy grandfather?
I did have a handy grandfather. That's funny that you say that, but not a GC dad. I think it sort of came from. I don't know how you become good at any trade.
Hours.
You got to put it.
There's no other way.
Like I don't want to fix a car because I'm afraid of it. But if I tried it, I'm sure I could figure it out. And I'm a handy guy. And I think it was just because I started doing something. A hairdryer broke, and my wife's like, "I'm going to throw it out." I was like, "Let me take it apart real quick and see if I can figure it out." I don't know anything about it, but there was a wire that had come off, and I'm like, I fixed it, and I kind of enjoyed that. And so I do that now. But
those 8 to 10 houses before you became a realtor, how?
Those were my testing grounds.
Yeah, but I'm curious, like how down and dirty were you getting? Were you crawling in the crawl space to look at it before you bought? Were you in the attic? Were you with the inspector? Did you just wait for a report? Like, what was your level of? That's funny. Intrigue?
I love attics and crawl spaces. I like a little. I like to scoot around in those, and I still do. I mean, it doesn't matter what I'm wearing. If I'm showing a house and it has a crawl space, I'm in there.
I mean, I have one of those suits.
I don't have the suit, but I'm not. There's a limit. If I have to truly wiggle on my belly, I'm not doing it. I'll shine a flashlight. But if it's big enough for me to get in there, I will crawl through cobwebs. Because that is crawl spaces and attics. You got to see the roof from the inside, and you got to see the crawl space. Those are the biggest, ticket items that you can have if you go under contract on a house and suddenly realize that there's a ton of stuff wrong with the house underneath. That's an expensive item.
Yeah, it's the place that as a homeowner, you probably simply don't go into until there's a problem. And correct. You care about the least, which is unfortunate because you should care about the most. Yep. It's confusing to me, but also explainable because I'm in the industry, we're in the industry, we know where the air handler's not in the bathroom. It's in the crawl or the attic. Right. So that means.
And HVAC is a big ticket item. So let's look at it.
Especially in the South. HVAC is huge. Oh man. Our summers and the humidity here is not to be, underappreciated, and we air conditioning oversize accordingly.
Yep.
But if that goes out, or whatever. But like, I don't want to get like so hung up on AC, but I'm just like, it's confusing to me how little you could care about your own attic and crawl space, because 100%. That's literally where like you could have the nicest, most expensive, just installed by the best contractor in the world windows. And guess what? That doesn't mean anything. Heat rises, everybody. Like, I don't know who is, I guess the window salesmen are trying to tell me to shut up, but like,
but those are sexy to people.
Right.
Crawl spaces aren't sexy, so I don't want to do it. A roof's
Exactly.
not sexy.
But that's dumb is what I'm trying to say. Like, you could spend $25,000 on a window upgrade and you should have spent $2,000 on more insulation in the attic.
Right.
Or
seal
whatever,
the crawl space.
or
Put
seal
the
the crawl space.
Whatever.
Whatever it may have been. Yeah, there's a few things, and we could even do an episode on that.
100%.
I'm kind of actually planning that episode with my aforementioned Matt, because he does in Vermont, the elements are so harsh, and he does like specialty retrofit to make them more efficient. So I was like very excited to break down that with him, because he's the smarter guy than me in that realm. And
you're geeking out on me.
I'm totally
can't wait
geeking
for this episode.
Hell yeah, this is my podcast. I don't get paid for it. I do it because I love it, man. Yeah. So it's still full circle bringing back. Like, it's just strange. You walk in and you care about the silliest things to me. You care about trim. You care about paint color, the thing that can be changed for the least amount of money. Right. It's like, what about the foundation? What about the footings?
It's like, what are footings? It's like, they don't get it.
No, they don't get it.
And I understand that. And it's my job, your job, to sort of somewhat educate them. But to your point, like, how much can I educate somebody? I don't think can go so far. I'm willing to go further, but I don't want to be held accountable for something that I'm not an expert on.
And also, you can just tell when you, at least, well, maybe you can't. I can tell when I've lost somebody. The eyes gloss over. Sure. They don't know what footer means. They don't know what stack of cinder block. They just, he's a computer engineer or whatever he is. He's like, this is not my world.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I can fix it, but like,
yeah. Oh, and I mean, I'm not above blowing up a deal. And I tell people that any new client I have, I'm like, listen, you're going to buy with your heart. That's your job. My job is to be the head part of that. And I will tell somebody who falls in love with a house, and I go in the crawl space and I'm like, it is a nightmare down there.
Yeah,
it literally looks like an underwater camera of the Titanic. There's things swinging from, it's horrible. And they were like, well, what should we do? And I was like, run screaming. Because you're about to put down $50,000 of due diligence, and I guarantee you're going to have a lot of work to do down there. So
you need $50,000 to remediate whatever's going on down there.
Exactly.
It's like, let's find you a better house.
I try not to. I tell people, hey, it looks good, but I will always recommend getting a full home inspection. Once we get that, hey, do we look at the HVAC and have somebody come in, the electrical, the plumbing? You got to do your due diligence.
Yeah.
And
then even once you have the inspection, I have been, for $100, a realtor will give me the home inspection and be like, hey, these 18 out of 70 things, give me a price for those 18 things.
Oh, I've sent those to you.
Oh yeah, you have done that. I was
exactly.
I got a few realtors who are like, because I can look at it and be like, obviously I need to be there in person to give you like a hold me to this number.
Right. But
I can look at
give
it
me a
and be
ballpark.
like, is it $1,000 or $10,000?
Correct.
Well, it's closer to 10. It's more like 6. But if you're looking for a worst case scenario, which you are, because you're trying to fight for money at closing, most likely.
or you're just looking at a house and saying, we haven't even gotten through this. We might have to walk away. But due diligence got so crazy. I mean, we were putting $50,000, $100,000 down on a $500,000 house. You're not going to walk away from $50,000.
No,
I don't want to walk away from $5,000, but no one wants to walk away from 50. So you go to these people and say, hey, there's $20,000 worth of repairs. Would you fix it? And they're like, no, if you would like to leave, we will keep your $50,000 and we'll sell the house tomorrow to somebody else. So again, digressing, but that part of real estate has come back to normal. People are so worried about what's going on in the market right now, but things are becoming less seller focused and a little swinging the pendulum toward the buyers. And that's one of those areas,
You're working with both, right?
I am. Buyers and sellers.
So when the market went crazy, you were like, I got money to make.
It was the Wild West. It was like a free for all. I mean, you had a listing. If you had a listing, you had 12 buyers of your own that you would be like, hey, listen, I can sell this before it even comes on the market if you want. You know, you don't even have to have people chasing through.
And then it's gone in 12 hours.
Exactly. Or you put it on the market and you stick a sticky note that says for sale in the mailbox, and you're going to have 12 offers in 5 minutes.
Yeah, when I was looking for land at the beginning of this, I've acquired some now, but I was looking for land, and Stacy would send me, listings of land, and I'd be like, wow, that's kind of cool. I'd be like, is there,
Nope,
on a Monday, and I'd be like, you think maybe like Wednesday at 11 we could get out there? And, 2 hours later, which is slow for Stacy's response time. Normally it's 2 seconds.
Yeah.
2 hours later, she'd be like, it's sold. Somebody out of state bought it sight unseen for 20 grand above asking. And this is raw land. And I'm like, that's not true. She's like, oh, it's really true. There were 6 people. I'm like, what? Or my mom will send me a listing for the next house we want to buy in Gut. And she'll be like, what do you think about this? She'll email it to me from Zillow, and then I'll forward it to Stacy and go, when can we get in? And she'll go, they have 14 offers, and they are accepting your best and final by 3 p.m. today.
Right.
And by 9 o'clock the next morning, they accepted one 50 grand over for a house that we were going to gut.
Right.
And it's like 50 grand's half our gut budget or half the whole house budget. Like what?
It was just
nuts.
Historically insane.
Yeah.
Like no one has ever seen that in real estate and probably won't again. Things have normalized again and people are freaking out.
What's your best guess on how it happened? Because obviously I'm sitting looking back, at the time COVID hits, and I'm barely affected. I just told you this past Thanksgiving while I was recovering from foot surgery, I got my first COVID bout, and I was down for 12 days. I'm a COVID believer. Don't get me wrong. But when COVID started, I was working on a house that I owned that had a lockbox with subcontractors who are all deemed essential by North Carolina law because we're in construction.
Right. We were not as real estate agents. We were not essential workers. We couldn't show houses in Durham County for 3 months.
Yeah. Which is crazy.
And yet we all had the best year we've ever had.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the most counterintuitive thing you've ever had.
Yeah.
People can't leave their homes. People don't want to leave them. How are we selling so much real estate?
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of factors that
Well,
can
it
happen.
went virtual, didn't it?
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And
but
those
I was trying to say that, like, I just kept working. I would call my plumber and be like, well, the lockbox is the same. The code is the same.
Yep.
Instead of meeting you when it's done, tell me it's done. I'll go look the next day. If
Right.
it's good, I'll mail you or leave you a check. Like, I just kept it moving.
And good for you. I mean,
suppliers were slower.
That's why you're still here doing what you're doing.
I mean, yeah, for sure.
There was a lot of people who didn't have either the foresight to figure it out, or like you said, it went virtual. If you didn't have that as part of what you offer sellers, I'm going to do a 3D tour of your home. We're going to take professional photographs. You would see so many houses pop up that somebody was taken with their iPhone or whatever, and it was dark and looked horrible.
Yeah, it's hard to virtually build a deck.
But when you're trying to sell to the California buyer who's going to buy it sight unseen, it better look damn nice. And so you've better have had that already in your systems and processes so you're ready to go. And I think that was part of the difference. I'd say the biggest factor, money got so ridiculously cheap. I mean, you're getting 30-year loans for under 3%. That's just, it probably will never, ever happen again in our lifetimes or in anybody's maybe. So money was so cheap. But then I think the one thing that COVID proved to people is that they can work from anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
And they can work remotely. The job that they had to be in San Francisco for, suddenly they were like, you know what? That's been
Zoom call.
That's been a big fat fraud. And I don't have to live in San Francisco. I went to Durham, or I went to Duke, I went to UNC. I'll go back to where it's cheaper. I like it better, and I can still keep my job in San Francisco.
I'm shocked that a lot of office buildings are even standing still.
You know what? I don't do commercial real estate, but yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't know how that's going to work. I mean, there's people that still don't go back to work. And why would they? Why would a company say, I'm going to sell this thing? We don't need this office space. That's our biggest expense. Work from home.
Yeah,
as long as you're doing your job.
I don't even think a lot of people obviously we assume that nobody's too dumb to know that nothing's for free, but I don't think anybody actually really understands, like, a commercial office building.
Oh my gosh.
The expense. They are the most inefficient things on the planet. They never are built for efficiency. They never have solar panels.
Right.
it's cheap because nobody's living there. It's the cheapest baseboard, the cheapest carpet, the blah, blah, blah,
But
blah,
it's
blah,
not
blah,
cheap
blah.
when you're in San Francisco or Chicago
No,
or New
but to
York.
run them is the energy bill and
Yep.
the nightly cleaner, the garbage pickup, the
100%.
window cleaner, the lawn guy who just mows that little strip. It's got to be mowed in the parking lot. Like
It does.
Like it's a legit.
And somebody's taking care of that parking lot.
And someone's taking care of that parking lot, and that is all an expense that building manager, whatever,
Yep.
is doing, and it's obviously dispersed correctly to the rent of those people. So it's like people don't really understand that is a massive expense, and like, what do we? Maybe we'd like to have an in-person meeting once every 2 months. We could rent an office space for 2 hours. We could rent a conference room for 2 hours if we really don't want to Zoom it. Because yes, a Zoom call with 20 people sucks. Let's just be real.
It's
like
the
you get
worst.
it done if you have to, but it's like the worst thing ever. I've done continued learning for my GC license on a Zoom call.
I've done that as well.
And I'm super lucky that 90 of us click join and one dude talks for 8 hours and we just stare at him.
Right.
And it's like, because if it was 95 of us having a conversation.
But inevitably you get on those Zoom calls where it is a little collaborative and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry, you go ahead. No,
I'm fortunate
you go
to
ahead.
never have
It's
had
like-
that happen. I've had the biggest I've had is like 8 people and it was family members. And it was like, we did a Christmas family Zoom and, I'm sitting here with my crazy, haven't cut my hair in a year in the middle of Corona. And I'm like, hey guys, how's San Francisco? How's New York? How's Mexico?
Yeah.
And even still, it's like, no, shut up. I'm talking like, and it's,
it is a word that will be around forever. I mean, Zoom was not, it was a word, but no one knew what it meant. I mean, it had meanings, but a Zoom call is like
standard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A Kleenex is a tissue, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, it's become one of those things now where like, at least for me on my iPhone, like you click a contact and then it's like message, call, FaceTime, whatever. But like now when you hit message, that drops down and it'll be like,
exactly.
Do you want the number? Do you want to iMessage his email? Do you want to send his WhatsApp? Do you want to hit him on Zoom? Do you want to
Carrier
hit him on
pigeon,
Skype?
whatever it is.
Yeah. Do you have a pig that runs? Like, and it's like, whoa, like already Apple, and I'm sure I'm not even like super against Android. I'm sure Android did the same thing where it's like, now it's a drop down menu and it's a standard. I remember when my pops was like, it was a big deal that he could Skype people from Mexico.
Oh,
it was a big deal. And
my grandfather used to, every time a fax came out, he would scream, there's a fax coming. And he'd stand there and watch the paper and he'd be like, this is coming from a different state. And quite honestly, I have no idea how fax works. I'm perplexed by that still.
As a kid, I thought the paper went through the line
Exactly.
into. I literally looked at my mom. I was like, "How does the paper get through that curly?"
It doesn't.
Cord.
Hold on, it doesn't. I thought that's how it worked.
No, Santa takes it.
Oh, I knew that.
Did you not know that? He's
Thank
busy.
you.
That's what he does. The 364 days.
That's why I've never gotten a fax on Christmas.
Yeah.
Thank you for
They
figuring
turn him
that.
off on Christmas.
I've learned something on this podcast.
That electricity goes towards the hybrid sleigh. He's borrowing a Tesla battery.
That's right.
Yeah.
I saw you have one out there.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I am a big fan of the Tesla.
I have one as well. Just got
Oh,
one.
yeah?
Love it.
What are you driving?
3.
Me too. Yeah, long range.
Yes.
The dual motor one.
And I think that's the way to do it. I mean,
yeah, I had the regular one at first because
and you probably drive around quite a bit when you're having to go, I got to do a job out.
I mean, honestly, if I don't need the truck, I don't drive it.
Yeah.
Like if I don't specifically need the tools that I'm not going to put on my Tesla seats or have to go get lumber or whatever,
right.
like I'll meet a client in the Tesla. If they think I'm charging too much because I have a Tesla,
then
I'll get another job. Like that's because I've heard that expression.
Oh, sure.
I've heard the expression from other contractors, like never meet a new client in your nice truck. They'll think you're charging too much. And I'm like, if that client really is just going to judge me on my vehicle, I probably don't want to be associated with that kind of person anyway. Like I'm not.
And you know how I afford that new truck in the Tesla? I'm really good at what I do.
I'm really good at what I do. Yeah.
Shoot me for it.
I'm not the best,
the guy you
but
want
I'm really
to hire.
good.
The guy who shows up in a truck that wheels are falling off, that's not the guy you want to hire.
I want to hire the guy who shows up 5 minutes early at the agreed upon time. That to me is 97% of what I'm looking for, if we're being honest. Because in this 100%. Day and age, I get too many people who are like, on a Tuesday, yeah, I will be there Wednesday at 9 a.m. And then Wednesday at 9:01, I'm there.
Yep.
And I've been there for 10 minutes in my car listening to a podcast. And then
Your own.
never, but actually that's not true. I listened to the first like 6 on how to get, just to try to get better. Now I listen to other podcasts, but sure, I listen to my own.
Exactly.
Just feed my own ego. Jesus. But then like 9:15 rolls around and I'm like, hey, 15 is kind of my grace period. So I'll shoot a text. Hey, where's it going? And then I'll either get no callback, no respond to the text, or an immediate text that's like, oh my God, this clearly I'm lying, but here's an excuse. Can we do it tomorrow? And, you know, I need to move the job forward. So I do say yes tomorrow. But
Sure.
like that to me is, you know, when you got a guy who shows up on time, that's
that's a
much.
powerful statement for anybody in business. You'd hire that guy almost because he was punctual and responsive and communicative.
Yeah.
Who cares what job he does, but you are now interested in what he does.
I'm already interested.
Real estate's the same way. It's not rocket science by any stretch. It is a people business. It's a relationship business. And you do have to know what is going on and know the industry, and that's great. There's a lot of people who don't, but there are people who are successful who don't know what they're doing in real estate, but they're very good at communications. They've got systems and processes, and they will follow phone calls, and you know, they're responsive and they're attentive. That's what people kind of want.
Yeah, it's really not that hard.
It's not.
I mean,
we're not even talking about how good you are or how good you,
Right.
what a good contractor you are. It's like, hey, half the battle is just making sure that you are treating people fairly, honestly, respecting their time, respecting their energy, and yeah, it's like, yeah, I mean that's half of it.
I mean, and again, I think we kind of touched on it a little bit, but like for you buying or selling, this is probably the biggest thing they're going to buy in their life until they buy the more expensive house from you years later.
Right.
And for me, they now own the craziest, most expensive thing in their life, and they're entrusting me to renovate, knock it down, make it bigger, whatever it may be.
Right.
Like
make it more enjoyable.
theirs.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, I don't know, maybe it's just because of how I was raised that means something to me. Like, yes, I have bills and I will charge accordingly. I'm not
Right.
going to replace it for free.
No,
but like,
no.
I use the fair pricing. You know, I know that there are people who will be like, wow, that, you know, $100,000 BMW, let's tack $500 onto this job.
Yeah.
I just don't do it.
Right.
I just simply don't. Because to me, I think that person's smart enough to know it, even though they're not.
Right. We've
But I
established
think
that.
they are
Yeah.
smart enough to know that they're getting hosed out of $500. And if they don't get hosed out of $500 from me, they'll call me for job 2.
Right.
And I'd rather get job 2 through 20 than
Right.
make that $500 extra dollars on job 1 and then not have another job and be the dude who overcharges.
Yeah.
Like, what's the benefit?
But that's an interesting thing for you because, you know, I feel like in real estate, and you mentioned whether it was on air, off air, the sort of HGTV debacle that's
It's
happened.
probably
Everybody thinks they know.
killing real
Everybody
estate
thinks they know.
expectations.
Oh, everybody thinks they know exactly what it is. You know, and it was crazy when the whole love it or list it, which is, you know, local around here, just the house flipping stuff. Everybody thinks they can do that. They can't. They know. You said you painted your interior one time with a spray paint. You're never going to do it again. And I am certain that 75% of those people who take on a project like that will never do that again. They shouldn't have done it in the first place.
Oh, yeah.
But with
And
real
let's be
estate,
clear, this was like we were redoing the whole house. We didn't have trim on the walls. We didn't have doors in. We didn't have cabinets yet. And I still wouldn't do this again.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
still wouldn't do this
It's
again.
just a stay in your lane. But people, I don't think like fixing a car, I don't think people know the cost. And so you could rip them off. I don't think with contracting, people really know the cost. Everybody thinks they know what the cost is in real estate. Well, here's the Zillow's estimate. So, you know, it's like, okay.
That's a very good point that you make, actually, because you could get 2 general contractors and both of them are honest and their price could be very different. And it's
100%.
just like, well, you know, maybe there's a material being used that's different. Maybe, you know, all 10 of his subs are just 3.5% more expensive, and that adds up to
Sure.
a 10 grand difference. You know, this is a big number.
Right. But
we're
once you
making
get
up.
to those bigger numbers, it's a big swing.
Right. No, it starts absolutely. So it's like it is very difficult to not get taken advantage of. So if you're a homeowner listening and you need a contractor, you need to call more than one.
Yep.
You need to talk to friends, family members, neighbors. Who have they used? What was their experiences like? And even if it was a good experience, get some information. How did they walk you through the process? Was it, this job is this much money, and then things started to change and it got more expensive?
Mm-hmm.
Who decided that the changes?
Right.
The homeowner.
Did they let you know that there was even going to be a change before they hit you with the bill?
Right, but a homeowner might be telling the story to their friend and being like, "Now he overcharged me $2,600," and then you actually press them, and it's like, "Well,
I changed 30 things."
Right, in the middle of the build, you added 3 rooms,
right.
You changed to a more expensive tile. Like, did he rip you off, or are you don't want to remember those details? It's like when you have a fight, with your spouse or whatever, and then you go to your boys, and your story is different than the one she tells her girls, which is different than the one you two tell each other,
right?
Which is even different than the truth. It's like,
honey, if you're listening, you're right. You're always right.
My grandmother had a great saying: "You're not under the mattress." Unless you're under the mattress to hear the fight in real time. Her version to her friends is different than your version to your friends.
Oh, of course.
And the version to the therapist. All 4 are different. All 4 are different.
Therapist, if you're listening out there, my wife is right as well.
Yeah. Future therapist, if you're listening, my future girlfriend.
Past, present, future. Yeah.
Jen, you're correct.
Wow. Yeah, but I think
you have to take a little bit of. You can no longer, when it comes to your home, being the babe in the woods is not okay. You need to take a foot and step into the realm of research. And if you're not going to do it, and then you get ripped off, that contractor's a jerk, but it's a shame on you.
Yeah.
Okay? You need to have some sort of, okay, this person did something similar in a similar time frame. If you want me to give you a price based on a bathroom that you show me, and then you ask that person how much it cost, and it's half, but they did it 11 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Materials are not the same as 11 years ago. The tech has changed.
Yeah,
Everything's changed.
Yeah.
The gas in my car is different price.
You don't have gas in your car.
I have a truck.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Sorry, that was a Tesla to Tesla thing.
Oh, trust me. Spark plugs are flying. But I have a reservation for electric pickup trucks. I can't wait.
Oh,
yeah, that's going to be...
Rivian thing?
I have a reservation for the Rivian and the Cybertruck, and I'll get whichever one comes first.
You let me know when that comes in. I want to come see that thing.
Yeah. I'll take either the too small Rivian or the ugly Cybertruck. I don't care. I want either
That's
one.
awesome.
Yeah, I actually don't think the Cybertruck's ugly. I just like calling it ugly because it's weird. I think it's gorgeous.
I think they're super.
Yeah, except for the Hummer. The EV Hummer is not attractive to me.
The Hummer's the Hummer. I mean, that just, to me, I'm sorry if it's electric. It probably is great, but it just still screams like giant gas guzzling monster.
To me, buy a surplus Humvee or don't do that.
Right,
like that
right.
To me, the Hummer is like you kind of are like military
right.
gung-ho,
You don't want an electric Hummer.
Kind
it's
of,
yeah.
Even a gas Hummer. It's
right.
like, or
get one of the
get a military
right.
Humvee that's like a real diesel Humvee, and then have a smart car to balance it out.
If you're trying to be badass.
But like, if you think getting a Hummer is like, I support the military because I've got a Hummer, you just look dumb. To me, this is only my opinion. This
is a judgment-free podcast.
Yeah, there's no facts on this podcast, just opinions. So, I guess let's end with, we kind of did jokingly, but not so jokingly, how you need to, research a contractor's license, ask recommendations from people you trust. You've got to be realistic. If you want a price from something that you show them a picture and that was done 10 years ago, you got, so you can take it into your own hands a little bit, and then also have a frank discussion about change orders. And for those who don't know, a change order is in the middle of the project. Nobody did anything wrong. You just change your mind. Guess what? It's allowed. Guess what? It's not free.
Exactly.
And you just need to know. There has to be a clear-cut, concise, if you're doing, let's hypothetical this. If you're doing a shower, right, and they frame the shower, they start putting up the backer board, which is, the board that goes below the tile.
Mm-hmm.
That is the true waterproofing stuff. And all of a sudden you go, stop. I want a niche. I want a little shelf for my soaps. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, How far are they? Is the tile up? Because guess what? You can't pop it off and reuse it. You got to break those tiles off, most likely.
Right.
That means we need another box of tile. Okay, well, they haven't tiled yet. Okay, well, probably just go buy the niche, $200, couple hours of labor, cut the hole, pop it in, waterproof, start tiling. So there just needs to be a clear-cut, concise, like, okay, if there's a change order, know that, like, I'm going to have to lay out the extra time and the extra materials, and beyond and I'm going to make it up, beyond the $7,000 flat for this entire job, I now need $450 extra for those 2 hours of labor and or whatever. You know, I'm just making this is all hypothetical.
But a good contractor will tell you you're changing something, and here's what it's going to be. But let's be honest. In any industry, there's a lot of people that aren't good or aren't honest or aren't upfront and communicate. Buyers need to ask. They need to say, hey, I'm changing this. What will it cost? Because I guarantee you, if you don't ask, there is a cost to it, and you're going to get that final invoice and be like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know it cost that much. Well, then you should have asked.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, the contractor probably should have told you, hey, FYI, this is not free. I'm changing something.
Yeah.
Here's, I'm going to fill out a change order sheet.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put a price on it, whatever it may be. Don't just rely on a contractor you assume is going to be honest and upfront.
Yeah, because you might go, hey, I want a niche, and the contractor might go, that is so not a problem. It's $800 extra, and you might go, you know what? It's not worth $800.
Exactly right. Or they'll say, no problem, I'll do it, and you're like, oh, great, cool, that was easy. I didn't, and you didn't know it was going to be $800, and suddenly you get that bill, and you're like,
yeah. And
I asked you to do it, and you said yes. He's
and for fellow contractors listening, backtracking a conversation in a text or an email is a great move. They come into the middle of the shower. Oh, it's $800 extra. That sounds good. Right then and there, in an email or text, just so there's a record, we discussed that you want a niche that was not part of the original agreement. We agreed on an additional $800. FYI, in North Carolina, a text is a contract. So, like, that's all you got to do, man. That's all you got to do. Put it in a text. Stuff. Put it in a text. I have language barriers with a lot of my subs, so we text on purpose.
Yeah.
So that I can just be like, 8,225. Right. It's right here.
And then
from
go to
11
Google
months
Translate
ago.
and it.
No, I don't even have to Google Translate. It's mostly for numbers.
Yeah, true.
Just to be like, okay, I want a price for all of this. Don't give me a price for the paint. Separate those two numbers. They give me the two numbers, and then if there's a confusion later, we can be like, oh, and we both go back 6 months to the same text that has the same number, and there's no argument.
Yeah,
it's just like, oh, I had it wrong, or I forgot, or you had it wrong, or you forgot. Boom, it's written right there in text.
So that's a perfect question to ask if you're going to hire a contractor. You can do all your vetting and your due diligence to find out. Ask them those questions. If I'm going to change, how do you handle a change order? Don't even give them the answer. How do you handle a change order? And they're like, oh, well, we can do those. Sure, no problem. If that's all you get, then maybe that's not your guy. It's like, well, do you tell me the price? Do you itemize it? How often do you send me bills? Or am I just going to get one at the end? Are you going to send me something half? If that person doesn't have it there, let's just say stuff together, then maybe it doesn't matter how good they are. You already commented on that. If they can't communicate, if they can't, if they don't have their processes down and their whole shtick ready to go, then it's going to be a bad experience probably anyway. Even if they do a wonderful job, something could go wrong if they don't do it the right way.
And I'm going to say something that might be a little controversial in this industry. If you're a client, do not ask your contractor for an itemized.
Fair enough. And I don't know what standard is.
Don't do it.
Why so?
Because they're not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to take the next job.
Fair enough.
I will tell you that it's $6,000 for the bathroom, and I'll write out exactly what we're going to do so there's no confusion.
Right, but you don't want to have to
But if you want to know that these screws cost this, and this grout costs this, and my tile guy costs this, and this, I am not going to do it.
You'd spend your entire day doing that.
No, contractor, the only contractor who's going to do that is someone who's been in the game for 6 months and has no clients. Because I'm not. It's not a joke. This is not a joke, people. This is not a joke.
Yep.
If you can't accept legitimate words that say this is where you are and this is where we will end and this is what I'm going to do,
right?
And then all of that equals $8,000. If that's not good enough for you, you should probably rent.
Yeah.
You probably shouldn't buy a house or do it all yourself, because I'm just telling you, like, you don't want the dude who has the time to give you an itemized list.
That's a
You
really
just don't want
interesting
it. It's some people are listening like, what? I've got a computer program and blah, 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 blah. And maybe you do. And maybe you do $1 million a year, and good for you. I am not an end all be all. This is the way to live life. This is my opinion on my podcast, and I'm giving it. But I'm telling you right now that, like, I've walked away from a job where I'm like, it's going to take me 5 days to get every little number, calculate tax, Home Depot. What if on day 3 the price of lumber changes? You know, I got to get 8 different numbers from my subs. They all have to hold those numbers. Also, by the way, listeners, prices are not good forever.
Yeah.
When you get an estimate from a contractor, it's usually only good for 30 to 60 days.
Especially when we had all that supply chain stuff going on.
On COVID, it's good for
daily.
a week. Oh, yeah. COVID is good for a week. Before COVID, it was still only good for 39 days because the price is always changing. Usually, it changes in a nominal amount. Obviously, you know, COVID, when $2 studs went to $10, that's different.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And the construction world should have all said, stop for a month, but we weren't able to do that's not real life. You know, if everyone just stopped for a month and then they would have dropped back down, but it's not possible. Instead, we tried to build faster thinking that would help. And it actually drove the price higher. It's leveled though.
Yep.
You know? So the last thing I want to ask you is, why is a listener going to hire you and not the 1 to 3 people that come on Google before you when they know nothing and they type in real estate agent in Durham, North Carolina, and they begin their search? Let's assume they're beginning their search that way because they've moved here.
A lot of people do.
Nobody. Yeah.
A lot of people do.
And let's just hypothetically say you're the third name. Why are they picking you instead of name 1 and 2? What do you do that another realtor maybe doesn't?
Sure. I would say that, and there's a lot of ways to do real estate, and none is better than the other, but I do less transactions usually at a higher price point. And so, and that's intentional. You know, I have fellow clients or fellow agents that will do 70 transactions a year and get to the same number I got to. But I guarantee you, if I'm doing 20 transactions and they're doing 70, what's the math on that? It's 3.5 times harder. You know, it gets spread thin. I give my clients a lot of attention. My wife is a business coach. I was trained as a business coach as well. And so I've mentioned it a couple of times, you know, processes, procedures, systems in place. If you don't have those things and you're just flying by the seat of your pants, it's going to show.
Real quick, business coach, she coaches you on how to run a business?
She helps small to mid-sized businesses do just that. A lot of times it's the business owner who can't, you know, who started the business but had no idea how to run it. They're just perfect. The real estate company I'm working for came to my wife and said, we're about to start 501 Realty. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing. I'm a good real estate agent, but I don't know if I know how to run a business the way I should. And so she helps them sort of implement from the ground up. Before you build the house without the foundation, she says, let's get everything in place, because processes and systems, well, I'm quoting my wife here, processes and systems run the company. People run the systems. So it's not people that are running it. If you've got your systems in place, that's what's really running your company.
I mean, even with this podcast, I had a friend of mine who was like, let's make you a template for 1 guest versus 2 guests. So you just click it and it's always set up. You don't have to configure it each time. And I was like,
yep,
those systems are in place. And I am an expert at GarageBand to do this. I don't know how to use it for anything else. I know how to use those systems.
If you hire me, I'm going to send you a what to expect document.
Yeah.
Because I want to tell you exactly what everybody does it differently. You know, there's similarities, but I might do it differently than somebody else. But I want you to know how I do my business and how I will help you.
And it's not, and I don't want to sound insulting at all, but realtors all do the same thing. So
100%.
You're selling yourself. You're selling your
at the end of the
personality
day,
and charm and how much am I going to work for you versus, because it's like.
And the game has changed because of the internet and probably because of HGTV. But, you know, the goal of a real estate agent used to be find me a home.
Right. You don't have to do that now.
Now they call me and say, here's the 50 homes I just looked at. And I did a 3D tour. And They know them better. I will walk into a showing and these people know the home inside and out. They've looked at it 10
like,
times.
oh, this is where the master is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's turn left.
I want
And
to
I'm
go
like,
look at that shelf I saw on the internet. Yeah.
So it's not my job anymore to find you a house. I can set up a search. It's automated. My job is the stuff that goes in between that. When we go under contract to when we close, there's a lot of moving pieces and parts in there, from home inspections to negotiating whether you're going to get repairs done by the seller or, a credit at closing. That's where I earn my keep.
That's where you actually are doing some work.
There's my psychology and sociology background. I love negotiations. Most real estate agents shy away from that. They don't want to ask the hard question of, hey, it is a nightmare below that crawl space. It's $20,000. And I'll do what my clients want. And this is how I sort of say it to them. If you want me to be North Carolina, nice and sweet, that's how I'll be. But I'm from Jersey. And if you want me to get Jersey on them, you unleash Jersey Mark, and I will go toe to toe with these people.
Yeah, I'd rather have Jersey Mark in that realm of
some people like DC Mark, somewhere in between there. Yeah, it's like, all right, it's not as rough and tumble, but if I need to call Vito Scarvaglione to come down and get a deal done, the deal gets done.
You should call me to be your
Vito
associate.
Scarvaglione is an actual person. I apologize. The names have not been hidden. Vito, you're a great guy. Paving and contracting, if you're up in New Jersey, Vito Scarvaglione, concrete. But
he's a real dude.
It is a real dude. It's just, he sounds like the biggest.
I hope he gets 20 grand in sales from this.
Right, exactly. I hope that Vito doesn't send anybody down to me. Vito's
for positively shouting him out. He'd be like, oh, you got me more business. I'm upset.
You're a good
man. I don't know if that's going to happen.
But I think that's why people would, I would hope why they would choose me. And that may not come across. You have to have a phone call with me before, because I don't want to work with people that I don't like. And that sounds bad.
So are you have you gotten the phone call and just been like, I'm not the right realtor for you?
It's not going to, and I have other realtors in my firm that they're just starting out. They'll work with anybody, whether they're nice or kind or annoying or whatever. And all my business comes from referrals. So not all, 95% of my business comes from referral. So they're already sort of pre-qualified, because if somebody's referring to me who's already been a client that I like, and I like all my clients, or it's a friend of mine. They kind of know a little bit about me. I already know that they're probably good people, or they wouldn't be referred to me. So that helps. But if somebody does do a Google search, maybe it's my my winning personality or my charming good looks.
They see Jersey in your eyes.
They do. They could say that guy looks nice, but there's some bad.
He's a killer.
He'll get us
him
the deal
under
done.
the crawl space. Yeah. Seriously, man, you got to go buy one of those Tyvek suits for when you get into the crawl space. Keep it in the trunk.
I look I guess I would look badass in that.
Well, you don't show up in it. That's what I'm saying.
Well, not like I'm driving around.
No, the one big enough that you step in over your clothes.
But they look at me and I'm all dressed up and they're like, that guy's getting in the crawl space. He's working hard for us. Look at those are nice pants.
Well, and then just real quick, go get the suit.
Yeah, that's it. I'll put the suit, store it underneath.
I had to do this once. I showed up to look at this lady's house in the Tesla, and I'm dressed. No one can see me, but I'm dressed like this in a tank top and gym shorts.
It's not pretty.
And it's gorgeous.
Yes, it is.
And not work shoes.
Yeah.
And she called her friend, and the friend knows me. So she knows it's like friend of a friend hookup, but also the friend is like, he's a legit general contractor.
Right.
Like he can, So I show up in a Tesla, general contractor in a Tesla, no work boots, no. And she's like, who are you? And I'm like, aren't we going in the crawl space? And she's like, are we? And I'm like, yeah. I pop open the trunk, boots, Tyvek suit, the full thing. I mean, I had a respirator, headlamp, goggles.
You're going spelunking.
I had the whole thing sitting in the trunk. I was like, don't be confused. I know what I'm here for. I am here to get in that crawl space. Let's go.
High radon, apparently. You're like a hazmat.
She was right in there with us, too, which was impressive. Me and her and my friend, all three of us under there. And I'm like, see this water? You could have looked at this. Oh, yeah. I don't need to tell you. It's running. It was actually running.
Those are my ideal clients.
Down a wall.
If a client will get in a crawl space with me, I love it.
Well, it was her house.
Right.
She was going to do some renovations, possibly sell, possibly rent. She's a realtor who just works for herself. She doesn't work for somebody. She does it kind of on the side. Shout out to Angie, who's actually been on the podcast. But But yeah, it was like she hopped right in there with. She was like, if he's getting in there, I want to see what he's looking at firsthand. I don't need him to come out and tell me there's water. I want to see the water.
Right.
It's like, there's the water that needs to be fixed. This is awful. And so she fixed it all, obviously, but it was like, it was cool that she got in there with us, and it was definitely a funny moment where she was like, Jeremy, why is your contractor in a Tesla? Yeah. And I'm like, don't be fooled.
We've already established it means he's good at what he does, people.
The front trunk is full of tools.
Just
FYI.
Frunk. The old frunk.
I used it today. Needed a hammer. I keep battery power drill, battery vac, bag of hand tools. Fits perfectly in the front.
You are carbon neutral. I love it.
I try,
you got a tiny footprint. For big feet, you got a tiny footprint.
Yeah, a lot of repair in those feet. Yeah. Well,
it's been a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
It has been a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming out. I hope that you had fun. I had a lot of fun. I hope listeners had fun. If you, if Mark is in your lane or you're in Mark's lane, don't hesitate to reach out to Nest. What's the best way for people to find you? Website, phone number?
Yeah, it's Mark Simpson. My cell, you can call my cell. I'll answer 919-627-2500, or you can just Google Mark Simpson Nest Realty, and I'll pop up.
Or it's 50. What is the number? 501 Nest?
No, it's now just Nest. It's
now it's
Nest,
just Nest.
Nest Realty. So if you need to email me, it's mark.simpson@nestrealty.com.
Okay.
Or cool. Just call Corbett and
yes. Also, if you call the Orange Hammer looking for Mark, we will put you two in touch.
And shout out to you, my friend. Yeah, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. And if you do need a contractor, I know we've talked about hiring around. Just start with Corbett.
I appreciate
start
the
and end
words.
with Corbett, but he's vetted. He does good work.
I appreciate the kind words. Thank you very much.
Was that what you wanted me to say? Is that $50? Is that what you give me now?
That's $200.
$200. I got it right.
Easy. Yeah, I bribe everybody who comes on. Seriously, thanks again. I appreciate it.
You got it.
Bye, everybody.